The Golden Age had dawned. Under the just and powerful reign of Cronus, the world was a masterpiece of divine order. Rivers flowed not with water, but with sweet nectar. The earth yielded its most delicious fruits and grains without ever needing the touch of a plough. Mortals lived in a paradise, an eternal, sun-drenched spring where age and sorrow were unknown. High atop Mount Othrys, the glittering palace of the Titans stood like a diamond set in the very crown of the world. But inside those magnificent marble halls, the king of the universe was decaying from within. Cronus sat upon his great obsidian throne, his massive fingers gripping the handle of his flint scythe so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had overthrown a tyrant. He had freed his brothers. And yet he was a prisoner in his own mind. The dying curse of his father Uranus was no longer just a fading memory. It had become a living thing, a parasite coiled in his thoughts, whispering to him in the dead of night, "Your own seed shall undo you." He would look out across his vast, perfect empire and see not loyalty, but shadows of betrayal. He looked into the eyes of his fellow Titans and saw only potential rivals, hungry for his throne. But most of all, he looked at his beautiful queen Rhea and felt a cold, sharp dread. He had come to a terrible realization. The greatest threat to a king is not the enemy storming the gates, but the heir sleeping in the cradle. The day Rhea gave birth to their first child, it felt as if all of Mount Othrys held its breath. The infant was a girl, Hestia. She was born with a gentle warmth that seemed to radiate from her very skin, a soft light that promised comfort to a cold world. Rhea held her precious child with a mother's fierce and overwhelming joy. She truly believed that this tiny, perfect life would finally thaw the ice that had formed around her husband's heart. But when Cronus entered the chamber, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He stood over them like a mountain of black stone, his shadow swallowing both mother and babe. He didn't see the beauty of his daughter's eyes, he saw only the prophecy. In his fractured, paranoid mind, Hestia's first cry wasn't a sound of new life, but a war horn signaling his future downfall. Rhea offered the child to him, her face filled with hope, expecting a father's warm embrace. But Cronus did not smile. With a movement so swift and brutal it defied the senses, he snatched the infant from her arms. Before Rhea could even draw breath to scream, he opened his mouth, a cavernous void of divine hunger swallowed Hestia whole. A silence louder than any thunderclap descended upon the room. No blood was spilled. No life was ended, for gods cannot truly die. But in that moment, the soul of a mother was shattered into a million pieces. Cronus stood still, feeling the warmth of his child settling in the darkness of his stomach. He felt a twisted, horrifying sense of victory. If the child had no world to stand upon, she could never stand against him. What began as a single, desperate act of madness soon became a horrific ritual. The paranoia of Cronus was insatiable. Each time Rhea felt the stirrings of new life inside her, a fragile hope would bloom in her heart, only to be cruelly harvested by the king's terror. After Hestia came Demeter, the golden goddess destined to rule the harvest. Then came Hera, born with eyes as majestic as a peacock's feathers. Then Hades, who carried the quiet intensity of the deep earth. And finally Poseidon, whose spirit surged like the untamed ocean tides. 5 times Rhea gave birth. 5 times she held her newborn and begged her husband for mercy. And 5 times Cronus stood waiting like a predator at a watering hole, snatching the infants from her arms before they could even taste the air of the world. Cronus began to change. His immortal body grew bloated and heavy, swollen with the divine power of the 5 gods imprisoned within him. He was no longer just a Titan king. He was a living tomb. The young gods lived on, growing in the darkness of his gut, their divine essences pulsing against the walls of their prison. Their light began to glow faintly through Cronus's skin, making him pulse with a ghostly, sickly radiance in the dark. He became a king who talked to himself, pacing the silent, empty halls of his palace, sometimes pressing his ear to his own stomach to hear the muffled curses of his children. He had become the very monster he once claimed to despise. He had traded his father's tyranny for a hunger that would stain the very stars. But Rhea was no longer a grieving, helpless victim. The loss of 5 children had burned away all her softness, leaving behind a core of obsidian resolve. She looked at her husband, this bloated, shivering shell of a king, and realized the golden age was rotting from the top down. Then she felt the 6th child stir. This one was different. The pressure in her womb felt like the gathering of a great and terrible storm. The very air in her chamber seemed to hum with static electricity. This was not just another god. This was a reckoning. This was Zeus. Secretly, Rhea descended into the deepest caves of the earth to seek the counsel of Gaia, the ancient Earth Mother, her own grandmother. Together, they wove a plan born of ancient magic and a mother's righteous wrath. They knew they could not defeat Cronus with strength, not yet, but they could use his own arrogance, his own insatiable hunger, as the blade to cut him down. And so we find Rhea standing in the dim light of the birthing chamber. She is not holding a child. She is holding a large, heavy stone taken from the very heart of the mountain, with steady, determined hands. She wraps the rock in the finest silks and swaddling clothes, even perfuming it to smell like a newborn. Outside the door, she hears the heavy, uneven footsteps of Cronus approaching. The stone floor trembles under his immense weight. He is coming for his meal. But as Rhea turns to face the door, her eyes are not filled with tears. They are filled with a terrifying, silent lightning. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how this epic showdown unfolds, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for the next episode.